Esther sat on the edge of her bed, her heart heavy with the decision she was about to make. She glanced at Mike, who was sitting across from her, his eyes filled with confusion and sadness. The room felt smaller with the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Mike had always been her rock, the one who supported her through thick and thin. But now, the cracks in their relationship were too deep to ignore. "Mike, I can't do this anymore," Esther said, her voice trembling. "I need more from life than what we have. I need security, stability, things you can't give me right now." Mike's face fell. He had heard her complaints before, but never thought she would leave. "Esther, I love you. We've been through so much together. I thought you loved me too." "I love you," Esther replied, tears welling up in her eyes. "But love isn't enough. I want a better life, and I can't see that happening with you. I'm sorry." She remembered the times they spent scraping by, the nights Mike spent working late shifts at the diner, and the way they celebrated small victories, like paying the rent on time. Mike's eyes reflected a deep hurt. "We can make it work, Esther. We always have." Esther shook her head, her resolve hardening. "I've made up my mind, Mike. I need to move on." With that, she walked out of Mike's small apartment. Esther quickly adapted to her new lifestyle. She began dating wealthy, married men who could provide the luxuries she desired. Expensive dinners, designer clothes, and exotic vacations became her new normal. She enjoyed the attention and the material comforts, convinced she had made the right choice. Her first taste of luxury came when she met Jonathan, a wealthy businessman who was captivated by her beauty and charm. Jonathan introduced her to a world she had only seen in movies. He took her to five-star restaurants where the waiters treated her like royalty, and they traveled to exotic locations on his private jet. Esther reveled in the opulence. She loved the feeling of wearing designer clothes and the way people looked at her when she walked into a room. She enjoyed the expensive gifts Jonathan showered her with, diamond necklaces, designer handbags, and luxurious spa treatments. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. As months turned into years, Esther's focus shifted from her career to her lavish lifestyle. Once a promising marketing executive, her work performance began to suffer. Her priorities changed, and soon she found herself jobless, relying solely on the gifts and allowances from her affluent lovers. Her days were filled with shopping sprees, spa appointments, and glamorous parties. She became a fixture in the city's high society, always seen with the most influential men. But with each passing day, she drifted further away from her old life and the career she once loved. Esther's descent from a promising career woman to a kept woman was gradual, but inevitable. At first, she didn't care. The men she dated provided everything she needed, and she enjoyed the freedom of not having to work. But the lifestyle came with its own set of challenges. The men she dated were often controlling and possessive. They expected her to be available at their convenience, and her life was no longer her own. She missed deadlines, failed to show up for important meetings, and eventually lost her job. Her thoughts drifted to Mike. She wondered how he was doing, if he had moved on and found happiness. The memory of their last conversation haunted her. She had been so sure that leaving him was the right decision, but now she wasn't so sure. At a high-profile charity event, Esther met Robert, a charming and seemingly successful businessman. He swept her off her feet with his charisma and wealth. Their whirlwind romance led to a quick marriage. At first, life with Robert was everything Esther had dreamed of. They lived in a luxurious penthouse, attended glamorous events, and traveled the world. Robert was everything she thought she wanted. He was handsome, charming, and incredibly wealthy. He lavished her with attention and expensive gifts, and she felt like she was living in a fairy tale. They attended exclusive parties, Esther convinced she had finally found the life she wanted. But as time went on, Esther discovered a darker side to Robert. He was involved in fraudulent activities, using his charm and connections to deceive investors and steal their money. Esther chose to ignore the red flags, enjoying the lavish lifestyle too much to question its source. Robert's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would disappear for days at a time, leaving Esther alone in their penthouse. When he was around, he was often on edge, snapping at her for the smallest things. Esther began to feel like a prisoner in her own home, trapped in a gilded cage. One night, as they attended a charity gala, Esther overheard a conversation between Robert and another man. They were discussing a business deal that sounded suspiciously like a scam. Esther's heart raced as she listened, realizing that Robert was not the man she thought he was. When she confronted him later that night, Robert became defensive and angry. He denied everything, accusing her of being paranoid and ungrateful. Esther felt a growing sense of dread. She had sacrificed everything for this life, and now it was crumbling around her. One morning, Esther's world came crashing down. She woke up to find Robert missing and the apartment raided by the police. Robert had been arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud. All their assets were seized, leaving Esther with nothing. The news hit her like a ton of bricks. She was suddenly alone, penniless, and facing a barrage of media scrutiny. The friends she had made in her new lifestyle quickly abandoned her, distancing themselves from the scandal. Esther was left to fend for herself, with no one to turn to. Desperate and penniless, she began looking for a job. But her lack of recent work experience and the scandal surrounding her made it nearly impossible. She faced rejection after rejection, her confidence dwindling with each setback. Her once luxurious life was reduced to a series of humiliations. She sold her designer clothes and jewelry to make ends meet and moved into a small, dingy apartment. She felt like a shadow of her former self, a woman who had lost everything. One day, as she scoured the classifieds for job openings, she saw an ad for a cleaning position at a large corporation. It was a far cry from her previous aspirations, but she had no other options. She was willing to do anything to get back on her feet. Determined to survive, Esther applied for a job as a cleaner. She walked into the towering office building, clutching her resume and feeling a mix of shame and desperation. As she waited for her assignment, she couldn't shake the feeling of familiarity with the place. She had once dreamed of working in such a prestigious company. The supervisor glanced at her resume, barely skimming the surface. "You're overqualified for this job," he said, looking at her with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "I just need a chance," Esther replied, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her desperation. "I'll take any job you can give me." He sighed and handed her a uniform. "You start tomorrow. Report to the 10th floor. And be on time." Esther nodded, thanking him before walking out of the office. She felt a strange mix of relief and humiliation. She was starting from the bottom, but at least she had a job. She couldn't afford to dwell on her pride. On her first day, Esther reported to the 10th floor as instructed. The building was a maze of glass and steel, a monument to corporate power and success. She couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for the career she had once pursued so passionately. As she stepped off the elevator, she was told to clean the executive offices. Her heart sank further. She had once dreamed of having an office like this, not cleaning one. But she pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. As she worked, Esther couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. She had once walked these halls as an aspiring executive, and now she was here as a cleaner. It was a cruel twist of fate. Around lunchtime, she was called to clean the CEO's office. She hesitated outside the door, taking a deep breath before knocking. When she entered, she was met with a shock. "Esther," Mike said, his eyes widening in surprise. He was standing behind a large mahogany desk, looking every bit the successful CEO. Esther's heart raced. "Mike," she whispered, barely able to believe her eyes. She felt a rush of emotions, shock, embarrassment, and a tinge of hope. Mike stood up, walking around the desk to get a closer look at her. "What are you doing here?" "I needed a job," Esther stammered, looking down at the floor. "I didn't know you worked here." Mike's face softened. "Sit down, Esther. Let's talk." Over the next hour, Esther poured out her story to Mike. She told him about her decision to leave him, her life with wealthy men, and her disastrous marriage to Robert. She explained how she had lost everything and was now desperate to rebuild her life. Mike listened patiently, his face a mix of empathy and concern. When she finished, he said, "Esther, I can't offer you the job you're applying for, but I can help you. I know you're capable of so much more." He offered Esther a position in the company's marketing department, with the promise to support her in continuing her education. He saw the potential she once had and believed in her ability to turn her life around. With Mike's support, Esther threw herself into her work and studies. It was a long and challenging journey, but she was determined to make the most of this second chance. She rediscovered her passion for marketing and worked tirelessly to prove herself. Mike provided her with the resources she needed, but he also gave her space to grow. He didn't treat her like a charity case. Instead, he saw her as a capable professional who had made mistakes, but was now on a path to redemption. As the months passed, Esther's career began to flourish. She rose through the ranks, earning respect and admiration from her colleagues. She also reconnected with Mike on a personal level, and their friendship grew stronger. They started having lunch together, discussing work and their personal life. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Mike invited Esther to dinner. They went to a quiet restaurant, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. As they talked, Esther felt a growing connection with him. It was different from the infatuation she had once felt. This was deeper and more meaningful. "Mike, I've been thinking," Esther said, hesitating. "About us. About what we used to have." Mike looked at her, his eyes warm and understanding. "I've been thinking about it too, Esther. We've both changed a lot since then, but I still care about you." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Finally, Mike reached across the table and took her hand. "Let's take it one step at a time. We've both been through a lot. Let's see where this goes." Over the next year, Esther and Mike's relationship deepened. They took things slowly, rebuilding their trust and understanding. They shared their hopes and fears, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life.